Where do you place the ball position for the driver? Well, if you said to me, I move the ball forward in my stance so that it's opposite my lead heel, then you're going to want to stick around and watch the entirety of today's video, because I'm going to discuss not only why using the feet as a reference for ball position is completely wrong, I'll share with you how you can use ball position to alter your swing path and to help you hit draws or fades with ease. Let me begin with the big revelation about ball position, which is you've been getting this wrong your entire golfing life. Up until now, the only reference you've used for ball position is where to place the ball relative to your feet. But that's wrong, and today I'm going to show you why you should be using the lead shoulder, which is the center of the golf swing, as the reference point for ball position. Once you understand this vital piece of information that's been missing from your game, you'll be able to control the curve, the accuracy, the direction of your ball flight better than ever before. To help you see this, I'm going to use the stack and tilt grid that's built onto the mat here using the T-claw to help you see some of this geometry and the importance of ball position relative to the lead shoulder. I've got the grid set up on the mat here, and I'm just going to make reference to a couple of these lines in particular today. The first one would be this straight line that comes out towards the tee of the golf ball here, straight towards the camera. That straight line really represents that lead shoulder that I was talking about. The lead shoulder is the center of the swing, and the radius emanates from the lead shoulder, meaning that underneath the lead shoulder is the point where the radius is the widest. That's typically where we would tell you to set up for the driver. And then for the clubs where we hit the ball from the ground, you'd see the ball progressively back or behind the center. And that's because the delivery of these clubs is slightly different. We want to have an angle of attack which is somewhat down into the ground with these iron shots, the wedges, even the hybrids and the fairway woods. All of these clubs should be hit from a point where they are positioned behind the center of the swing. Now, you could look at my feet and say, well, you've got the ball further back for the shortest clubs and you've got the ball further forward for the longer clubs. And that would be true. But I'm going to show you now why using the feet as your reference is a mistake that you've been making for a long time and is costing you when it comes to understanding ball position. And the next part of the grid diagram to help you understand how ball position influences this geometry would be to show you how the ball position relative to this lead shoulder affects the swing path. And this is huge. When it comes to the driver, this is the bit that 90% of you are getting wrong. So as you look down at the grid, and we can see the balls in different positions here, where I strike or when I strike this golf ball relative to this lead shoulder will not only have an influence on an angle of attack, whether it would be down towards the ground or up away from the ground. There's also this component of the grid here which talks about the arc of the club head and the arc of the hands. If we pay attention to the arc of the club head for a second, you'll also see that as this club's traveling down towards the ball, because we play golf on this tilted angle, the downward component of this, meaning the bit where the club's reaching the ball and it hasn't quite got to this lead shoulder yet. This lead shoulder is the bottom of the swing, remember. All of those swings where the club's coming down towards the ball that hits the ball before the lead shoulder, we have a more in to out path built in to the swing. So the club's traveling a little bit out towards the right side there as it reaches the ball and strikes the ball before the lead shoulder. Something where the club reaches the ball and strikes the ball directly under the lead shoulder would produce the straightest swing direction. So when I hit the ball directly under my lead shoulder, the path of the club at that point in time would be pretty close to neutral or zero. And then the final piece of this puzzle would be the later I hit this ball, so if I hit the golf ball after the lead shoulder, so the club's already gone past this lead shoulder, and I strike the golf ball somewhere in this area right here, the path of my swing, the direction of my swing, as you can see from the grid lines, is now moving more to the left or out to in. So the ball position has a direct influence not only on angle of attack but on club path. And the club path has a massive influence in the overall direction of your shot. And that's important for all clubs, but it's particularly important for the driver. And why is that? Because you move the ball position forward with the driver towards the left heel. And let's argue for a second that the left heel would be the agreed position for ball position with the driver. But I can make that left heel ball position very different from that whole geometry setup that I just discussed by placing my lead shoulder in a different place. Meaning, if I set up with the ball on my lead heel, which apparently is correct, but then for whatever reason I had a maybe slightly wider stance with the driver, I lean back a bit more, create some spine tilt that sometimes you'll hear people tell you you're supposed to do. Now as I set up for this driver, instead of having the ball underneath my lead shoulder, the ball's now way forward of my lead shoulder. Add to that the fact that I'm probably going to try and shift and get behind the ball because I'm supposed to do that, right? That's going to help me hit the ball far. And by the time I come back down to hit this ball, this club's reached the bottom of the arc way before the ball. And now when I actually make contact with this golf ball, I'm swinging so far across that my only options are to hit the big pull to the left or leave the face somewhat open and slice the ball back to the right. So that's what this would look like with driver. Although I've got the ball on my lead heel, I've got the ball way too far forward relative to my lead shoulder. This is the golfer who historically is a slicer and doesn't understand why the driver doesn't work when your irons have been so good. So that's what this swing would look like. The ball's too far forward of the lead shoulder. I'm going to slice this driver into the rough on the right. Out to in 6.4 degrees, huge slice, and a very short ball flight. That ball's carried about 200 yards, which is not going to work. Okay, that's just definitely not functional at all. Now, I could take that same ball position and I could, relative to the feet, the same ball position relative to the feet, so I've still got this thing off my lead heel, and now I'm setting up in more conventional driver position for me. I've got my weight a little bit more forward, I'm certainly not leaning back excessively, and now I've got this lead shoulder hovering directly over the top of this line. That's pretty much my prescribed position for driver. Get the golf ball underneath the lead shoulder. So you hit it at the bottom of the arc from an angle of attack point of view, and you're also swinging pretty straight from a down the line perspective. So now I've got the ball, as I say, relative to my feet, it's in exactly the same place. But relative to my lead shoulder, it's now much better from a geometry point of view. Just going to go ahead and hit driver, just like my standard swing, and we'll see the difference we get in the outcome of this shot. Tiny little push to the right. Club path was 4 degrees in to out. That one's gone 260 yards. Pretty decent drive, more like my normal pattern. I was able to influence my swing path there by more than 10 degrees just by changing where I position the ball. So I think it's fair to say that using the feet as a reference for the ball position can be misleading, and you need to start using this lead shoulder as your reference for all your shots through the bag. So let's take this new information and use it to our advantage. How can we use this to make our ball control more precise? Well, I'm going to show you exactly how to fade the ball or draw the ball at will using this grid diagram and your new understanding of the ball position. I've set up the grid one more time here, and I've changed the position of the T-claw to be able to help you see this fade setup in a little bit more detail. One of the choices that you would have if you wanted to hit a fade, particularly with the driver, would be to position the golf ball forward of the lead shoulder. We've already talked about it. Some of the poorest golfers do this by accident, and their fade actually turns into a wicked slice. But for those of you who are trying to fade the golf ball and don't want to change the way that you aim your body, then you can use the grid and the understanding of this geometry, this newfound understanding, to help you manage your swing path. So to hit a fade, we want to have the swing direction a little bit out to in, and we want to have the club face slightly open to that swing direction. So the easiest thing that I could do would be to use the center of the swing, the lead shoulder, as this reference point at the bottom of my swing arc, and then position the golf ball 1, 2, I've got it like 3 balls forward here just for effect. The more forward I place it, the more left I would be swinging, the more across the ball I would be swinging. So there would come a point of diminishing return here. If you had the golf ball too far forward, you'd certainly start to swipe across it too much, see too much curve, and likely lose some distance. But for the purpose of demonstration, I've got the ball forward so you can see this. And this is exactly how I would fade the golf ball if I was playing golf myself. I'd stand on the tee, I'd move the ball further forward than I would usually have it, and just make sure that as I'm swinging through, I just feel like the face of my golf club is a touch more open than it would be for my normal shot. You'll also notice that as the ball's forward, the handle of the club is a little bit back. That's exactly what this line is referencing here on the grid. It's just giving you a visual representation of the radius now being set in front of the center. And now the great thing about this procedure is in terms of changing your setup like this, the adjustment is now done. You can go ahead and make a normal swing. I'm not changing my swing to fade the ball at all. I'm not thinking about a different swing path. I'm not having to remember to aim differently. All I'm doing is moving the ball forward in my stance, making sure I keep my face 1 or 2 degrees more open than I normally would. And now I'm going to go ahead and make my regular swing. Absolutely perfect fade. Just a small pull fade, started to the left, curved back to the center. That was perfect. I didn't think about any modifications during my swing. So this setup adjustment makes things really easy. And I think for many of you, that will be music to your ears. You don't want to have to think about lots of different things when you're trying to change your ball flight. But when it comes to setting up for a fade for the driver, this technique will work wonders. Why don't you just give it a try and just let me know how you get on with it. And for those of you screaming at the video right now and saying, I already fade the ball too much, Rob, I need to learn to draw the golf ball, I need more distance, what can I do? Well, then you just change the setup like described here. The visual now with the grid is that the center is just in front of the ball. And I place the ball just a fraction behind the center. There's this small difference here that I'm using the grid lines to try to show you. You have to be somewhat careful with this. I don't like to see the ball getting too far back, but if you do struggle with an out to in swing path, meaning you swing excessively across the ball, placing the ball further back in your stance will help you, because it will help you, as we described earlier, about helping you to hit the golf ball on the back side of this arc while the club is still traveling in to out. So this setup probably doesn't look that unusual. The ball's not that far inside my lead heel, if we were going to still use that reference, but it is behind my lead shoulder. And the other thing that you could do if you wanted to draw the ball would be to make sure you keep your weight more towards the target. I've done videos on weight forward with the driver. If you haven't seen those yet, you should certainly check them out, particularly if you want to draw the golf ball. So now this feels much more like my stock or standard setup. I'm not going to do very much different here from what I would normally do, and I'd fully expect the ball to draw. Nice high draw, slightly into out club path. Everything that I would expect to get from that setup. So that's how you can use the ball position to influence your swing path, and by influencing your swing path you can control whether you want the ball to curve more to the left or more to the right. So hopefully some useful education there for you on the topic of ball position, a subject, as I mentioned, that often gets misrepresented. My goal with the video today is to help you to understand that ball positions are variable, and if you take nothing else away from today's video other than the fact that you can change your ball position in order to change your desired shot shape, then I feel like the video will have served its purpose. If you did enjoy the video today, I would love for you to hit that like button. And we just hit 10,000 subscribers this week on the channel, which I couldn't be happier about. I want to thank you for your support, and if you're new here, do consider hitting that subscribe button. The videos I make on this channel give me great joy. I love seeing how much you guys are enjoying the content, and if you'd love to see more golf related content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. The video today possibly unveiled some secrets about the ball position that you'd never heard before. If you'd like to continue your journey of uncovering further secrets about the golf swing, then I'd encourage you to click on this video next. It talks about the role of the trail arm in the downswing and Ben Hogan's famous elbow lesson, including the one piece of advice that Mr. Hogan forgot to share with you.